After our parents' funeral, my sister dumped boxes at my feet. Find another place to die. Until the lawyer read, Claire inherits the $4.6 million home. My name is Claire Bennett, and I was 36 years old when my sister looked me in the eyes and ordered me to find another place to die. 4 days after our parents' burial, while I was still using a cane from the automobile accident that nearly killed me 3 years before, Madeline stood at the doorway of the only house I had left and delivered those words without shedding a tear. She'd brought moving boxes. She had brought her spouse, as well as a ruthlessness that I had no idea she had. Our parents had recently been buried. The flowers on their graves had not yet faded. And my sister, my own blood, was kicking me out of the house where I'd spent the previous 3 years recuperating, healing, and caring for the same people she seldom saw. She assumed I had nothing. She believed I was useless. She made an incorrect assumption. Before I tell you what happened at the lawyer's office 5 days later, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the tale. Please let me know in the comments where you're viewing from and what time it is. To understand why those words stab deeper than any knife, let me take you back to the day when everything changed. 3 years before my parents died, I was a landscape architect in Hartford, running my own little practice. I developed gardens for affluent clientele, renovated old homes, and had recently signed a contract with the city's botanical organization. Life was good. Life made sense. Then a drunk drove through a red light. I can't recall the impact. I just remember waking up in a hospital room with metal rods in my spine and doctors telling me that I would never walk again. The procedure lasted 13 hours. Recovery would take years. My flat had stairs that I could not ascend. My workplace had tasks that I couldn't handle. My funds had limits, which medical expenses did not respect. So when my parents gave me a first-floor guest room, I accepted. I returned to my childhood home, to the bedroom where my high school track trophies remained on the shelf. For 21 months, I used a wheelchair. I learned how to traverse door frames and bathroom tiles, as well as the humiliation of needing assistance with tasks I had done on my own since childhood. My mother would read to me on bad days. My father built a ramp on the back porch so I could sit in the garden. Madeline phoned once a month, occasionally less. She never inquired about my physical treatment. She never inquired how I was doing. When she called a few times and I responded, her reaction was always the same. Oh, you are still there. Put mom on. Is it still there? As if I were a stain that wouldn't get out. What Madeline was unaware of, and never inquired about, was that I had begun walking 5 months before our parents died. First use a walker, then a cane. I was healing. I was becoming stronger. But to her, I was always the worthless one. The Christmas before my parents died, Madeline arrived home with her ideal family. Evan wore a cashmere coat that was more expensive than my monthly medical payments. Their 2 children, Lily and Noah, raced through the house as if they owned it. Madeline oversaw everyone like a stage manager, moving the furniture, scrutinizing my mother's table settings, and reminding us all of proper procedures. I spent 3 days making her kids' favorite meals. Noah eats homemade mac and cheese, while Lily eats chocolate chip pancakes. I did it standing at the counter, cane propped against the stove, my back screaming after 20 minutes because I wanted to help. I wanted to be useful. On Christmas morning, everyone gathered in the living room for the traditional family portrait. My father put up the tripod. My mother adjusted the decorations on the tree. The youngsters battled about who would stand in front. Madeline glanced at me and smiled, but not warmly. Claire, perhaps you should sit this one out. We're looking for a good shot for our Christmas card. The room became silent. My mother opened her lips and then closed it. My father looked at the camera as if he hadn't heard. Madeline shrugged. The wheelchair does not exactly suit the look, you know. I wasn't even in my wheelchair anymore. I was standing with a cane and didn't protest. I'd realized that disagreeing with Madeline simply gave her fodder. So I smiled, nodded, and entered the kitchen. Through the glass, I saw my family posing without me. I heard the shutter click, 1, 2, then 3 times. I had no idea my father had seen the entire event or what he did the next morning. My parents died on a Thursday in March. They were heading to California to attend the wedding of an old college acquaintance. A private charter with 7 guests, clear skies. The plane crashed down somewhere above Nevada. They stated it was a mechanical breakdown. They say it happened quickly. When the phone came, I was in the garden, trimming the roses my mother had planted 17 years before. The phone rang and 45 seconds later, my entire life fell apart. Madeline flew in for the funeral. She managed everything. The arrangements, flowers, and guest list. I was too numb to battle her about it. I sat in the first pew for the service and realized I didn't know half of the folks present. Madeline's acquaintances and contacts, individuals who had never met my parents but wanted to pay their respects. 4 days after we buried them, Madeline requested to talk with me privately. She discovered me in the living room, surrounded by condolence cards I couldn't bear to open. She did not sit down. She stood at the doorway, arms crossed, with Evan lurking behind her like a shadow. "I've spoken with the lawyer," she replied. "Everything goes to me, the house, the accounts, everything." I was staring skyward. "What lawyer?" "The lawyer." She waved her hand dismissively. "Mom and Dad's estate lawyer. He verified this." "Did he provide you any documents? A copy of the will?" Madeline's eye twitched slightly. "I do not need to show you anything. You have 17 days to locate another place to reside." Something chilly settled into my gut. Madeline had told the lawyer. No name, no firm, just the lawyer. My folks had been using Samuel Prescott for more than 20 years. If Madeline had actually spoken to him, she would have mentioned his name. She wasn't telling the truth. That night, I sat alone in my parents' study and reflected about my life. No job. I liquidated my company 20 months ago because medical expenditures made it hard to keep the lights on. No savings. What little money I had went into copays, specialists, and the never-ending list of medicines that prevented my spine from stiffening up. No income. Disability benefits barely covered the essentials. And now, it appears that there is no home. I gazed around the room. My father's desk, worn smooth after 42 years of use. My mom's reading chair. The cloth faded where she usually lay her head. The window that looked out into the garden we had created together. She planted. I design. We were both fantasizing about what it may become. This house consisted of more than simply 4 walls and a roof. Here is where I took my first steps. I learned to ride my bike in the driveway. My mother taught me to cook. My father taught me to dispute. Every room contained a memory. Every corner included a piece of my parents. If I walked away today, I would not just lose my house, I'd lose them all again. Worse, I would be proving Madeline correct. I would accept that I was useless, that I did not deserve to be here, and that I was worthless. I couldn't accept it. I would not. I began opening drawers, seeking for something. A hint that Madeline was incorrect. In the bottom drawer of my father's desk, behind old tax records and faded pictures, I discovered a business card. Samuel Prescott is an estate attorney. I turned it over. There were 6 words on the reverse, written carefully by my father. Call him. He knows everything. My father never made notes. Never. So, why this one? 5 days later, Madeline returned. I was in the living room practicing walking without a cane. The physical therapist stated that I was ready to attempt. I wanted to prove that I could achieve anything on my own. The front door burst open. Madeline strolled in, carrying cardboard boxes, and Evan followed after with more. She dumped them at my feet, and the hollow thud echoed across the room. She said, "Pack your things. You have till Monday." "Madeline, I need more time. I am still what? Still claiming to be ill. I was in an automobile accident. You are aware of this." 3 years ago, she kicked one of the boxes at me. "You've milked it long enough." Evan shuffled uneasily. "Honey, perhaps we should keep out of this." Evan, behind me, I heard Helen Brooks, the nurse who had cared for my parents in their final months, enter from the kitchen. She paused at the doorway, her eyes wide. Ruth Callahan, our 42-year-old neighbor, was standing next to her, delivering a casserole. They both heard what happened next. Madeline walked closer, close enough for me to smell her perfume, which was costly and biting. She gazed at me in the same way you look at rubbish that has to be emptied. She said, "Find another place to die. You are now useless." The words remained in the air. Helen made a little noise. Ruth's hand moved to her chest. Madeline did not even look at them. She saw them as invisible and inconsequential. But I noticed Helen doing something unusual. She took out a little notepad from her pocket and jotted something down. She was quick and unobtrusive, as if she were taking vital signs from a patient. At the time, I had no idea why. Later I would. Ruth was the first to move. She stepped forward. Her 70-year-old figure stiffened with the type of rage that only decades of friendship can engender. She had known my mother even before I was born. She'd held me as a baby. She had watched both Bennett daughters grow up and had definitely taken a side. Madeline Grace Bennett. Ruth's voice might have sliced through glass. If your mother could hear you right now, she'd roll in her grave. Madeline turned slowly, her face set in polite bewilderment. "I apologize. Who asked you to join this conversation? I have known this family for 42 years. Which is longer than you have been alive, young lady. This is a family company. I was a part of your family even before you could walk. Ruth walked to stand by me, her hand resting on my arm. Margaret adored both of her children, but she wasn't blind, Madeline. Neither of us were. Something flared on Madeline's face. Uncertainty perhaps, or simply irritation at being confronted. Evan moved forward, grasping for his wife's elbow. Madeline, come on. We can address it later. Do not touch me. She backed backward, her voice rising. My mother left me in charge. Not her. Not a neighbor who believes she has the right to. Your mother did not leave you in control of anything. Ruth's comments were hushed. Final. Not yet. The room became motionless. Madeline's jaw constricted. She looked at me, then Ruth, and last at Helen, who was still standing at the kitchen doorway with her notebook. Fine. Madeline grabbed Evan's arm and dragged him toward the door. Monday, Claire. I need you out by Monday. The door banged behind them. Ruth grasped my arm. Don't worry, honey. This is not over. I believed her. The next morning, Evan returned alone. I discovered him standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, as if he had lost an argument with himself. He trembled when I opened the door. Madeline has no idea I am here, he replied hastily. Can we speak? I allowed him inside. We sat in the living room, he on the edge of my mother's chair and me on the couch, my cane propped up against the armrest. He refused to meet my gaze. Look. He began around yesterday. Madeline is under a lot of strain. Pressure to kick her handicapped sister out of her deceased parents' home. He grimaced. It is not personal, Claire. We absolutely need the money. I went very still. Need. The home itself is worth. He paused, caught himself. I mean, the estate should be handled soon for everyone's sake. Evan. I leaned forwards. What's happening? He was silent for a long time. Then in a voice just above a whisper, we were in trouble. My investments from last year did not pan out. We owe a lot more than we can pay. How much? He glanced up, down, anywhere but at me. 420,000, give or take. The number hovered between us, like smoke. The bank is threatening to take our house, he said. The kids' school has inquired about next semester's tuition. Madeline tries to keep things together, but Evan... Madeline's voice, sharp as a dagger, echoed from the doorway. We both leaped. I hadn't heard her car come up. What are you doing here? She gripped his arm, her knuckles white. Let's go immediately. Evan whispered something to me as she hauled him outside. It may have been sorry. It could have been helpful. And I understand what some of you may be thinking right now. Why didn't Claire fight back? Why haven't you said anything? I asked myself the same question. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes the wisest reaction is to not respond at all. If you've ever been underestimated, let us know in the comments. And if you want to know what occurred in the lawyer's office 5 days later, stay watching. Now, return to the tale. That evening, I discovered the business card again. Samuel Prescott is an estate attorney. The calligraphy on the reverse appeared to sparkle beneath. The desk lamp. Call him. He knows everything. I called the number before I could talk myself out of it. The phone rang twice, followed by a deep, measured voice. Prescott Law Offices. Mr. Prescott, this is Claire Bennett. Jonathan and Margaret had a daughter. A hiatus, followed by warming. Miss Bennett, I have been waiting for your call. Something in his tone made me grasp the phone more tightly. Have you? Your father said you'd contact me. In fact, he was pretty confident. The papers rustled in the background. I believe your sister has been making claims over the estate. She claims that everything belongs to her. She claims you verified it. A dry chuckle. I have not spoken with Madeline since your parents' anniversary party 4 years ago. She has obviously not called my office. The relief that washed over me was nearly overwhelming. So she is lying. I would not presume to describe your sister's statements. What I can tell you is that your parents had very precise wishes. He paused. Very specific, Miss Bennett. What does this mean? That implies I'd prefer you to visit my office prior to the formal reading. Certain portions of the will require background. Another pause. This time, the duration is longer. Nobody, not even your sister, is aware of these details. I scribbled down the appointment time with trembling hands. Miss Bennett. His voice softened. Your father amended his will 7 months ago, shortly after Christmas. He told me he could finally see things properly. He had been watching the Christmas photo, even though I was not in it. Helen Brooks arrived the day before the official will reading to say her final goodbyes. She stood on the doorstep, a cardigan tightly wrapped over her shoulders, appearing smaller than I recalled. For 10 weeks she had been a fixture in our house, collecting my parents' vital signs, administering their meds, and sitting with my mother throughout the long nights when the agony kept her awake. Her duty was now complete, and she would go on to the next family, patient and ending. "I wanted to give you something," she explained. She delved into her backpack and took out a leather-bound notepad with worn edges. I immediately recognized it. My mother's handwriting dominated the whole page, her looping cursive, and the way she always pressed too hard with her pen. "Your mother has requested me to keep this secure." Helen pushed the notepad into my hand. "She said you will need it eventually. She claimed you would know when." I drew my mother's initials on the cover. "What's inside it?" "Her ideas, days, and observations." Helen paused. "The final few pages feature you and your sister." I did not read them. It was not my place. But I believe she wanted you to comprehend something. "What do you understand?" Helen looked down the street, as if to ensure that we were alone. "Mr. Prescott has something else going on. Your mother created a video message a few months ago." She met my gaze. She was quite explicit on when it should be played. My throat clenched. "Helen, why are you telling me this?" She stretched out to squeeze my hand. "Claire, your mother knew. She knew what Madeline would do, so she prepared." Helen took a step back toward her car. "Your parents loved you both, but they were not blind." The journal seemed weighty in my hands, almost like a promise or a warning. "Madeline planned the memorial reception in the same way she planned everything else, expensively and without consulting anybody. The restaurant was Italian and expensive, complete with linen napkins and servers who introduced themselves by name. She had hired out the private dining room, arranged the caterers, and sent invitations on cream-colored card paper with my parents' names embossed in gold. She had not asked me about the food. She had not asked me about the guest list. She had not asked me anything at all. I came late. My cab had become caught in traffic, and walking from the parking lot with my cane took longer than I had expected. When I entered the private area, Madeline was already standing at the head of the long table, holding a glass of wine and delivering a speech. 45 people sat in front of her, relatives and uncles I scarcely remembered, and parents' acquaintances whose names I had forgotten. Evan's business associates, Madeline's book club, a sea of faces, some grieving, others simply looking on. They'd toiled their entire lives for this family. Madeline was speaking, her voice conveying the same tone she used when she wanted others to adore her. "And I swear to uphold that heritage. I will defend this house, this neighborhood, and everything they have built." She described this family as a claim, like a title of ownership. I stood at the doorway, but no one in the room recognized me. "Mom and Dad would be so proud of what we've accomplished," Madeline concluded. "The Bennett name will remain. I'll make sure of that." I grasped my cane till my knuckles became white. She had not mentioned me once. Not once. It was as if I had already been removed from the family she was so eager to protect. Someone in the throng saw me standing there. A murmur sounded around the room. Heads turned. Madeline's sentence stuttered briefly before she recovered with a polished smile. "Claire, you made it." The way she phrased it, as if my existence was a little surprise or an afterthought, made my skin crawl. I walked toward an empty seat in the back, my cane tapping against the smooth floor in the quiet. "Madeline." Aunt Helen, my father's older sister, spoke from the center of the table. "What about Claire? Where will she reside now?" The question remained in the air. 45 sets of eyes moved between us. Madeline's grin did not waver. "Claire has her own intentions. She is going through a shift." "Where are we transitioning to?" Helen pushed. Madeline shrugged softly. "Wherever she can manage. She has always been resourceful." Several individuals chuckled. Small, anxious chuckles. The type that people give when they don't know what else to do. But they laughed. I stood there with my cane, feeling the weight of each glance. Some people looked at me with sympathy, while others judged me. Most people simply turned aside, uncomfortable, ready to return to their drinks and polite chat. Madeline passed me on her way to welcome someone at another table. As she passed, she leaned in closer. "I told you to stay at home," she muttered. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't reply. I remembered what Samuel Prescott had said when I went to his office that morning. "Allow her to talk. The more she talks now, the greater the silence afterward." So I took my seat. I folded my hands in my lap and waited. Madeline had no idea what was coming. Ruth came 20 minutes later, dressed in black and with an unsettling expression. She scoured the room until she located me alone at my corner table, moving food about my plate but not eating. Then her eyes turned to Madeline, who was holding court near the bar and giggling at something Evan said. Ruth's jaw stiffened. She went straight up to me. Is it true? She inquired, sitting down. What did Helen just tell me? Did Madeline actually say you were transitioning? I nodded. Ruth got back up. Before I could stop her, she raised her voice loudly enough to drown out every other conversation in the room. Margaret and Jonathan would be embarrassed if they saw this. The room became quiet. Madeline turned with her wineglass stopped halfway to her lips. Excuse me. Madeline's voice was icy. You have heard me. Ruth did not flinch. She pointed to me and said, This girl took care of your parents every day while you were too busy to visit. She washed them. She fed them. She clutched your mother's hand when she felt afraid. Ruth's voice crackled, but she continued. What have you done, Madeline? Send flowers. Someone gave a gasp. Evan moved closer, grabbing for Madeline's arm, but she shrugged him off. You have no rights. I have every right. Margaret and I were closest friends for 42 years. Ruth walked to stand by me, placing her hand on my shoulder. And I know the type of daughter you've been. The hush was total. Somebody coughed. A fork clinked against the plate. Madeline's face had become crimson, then white. For the first time, I noticed a break in her demeanor, something unsure. Ruth bent down and whispered into my ear. I chatted with Samuel this morning. He informed me what was coming. Please wait, honey. Please wait. 5 days later, I entered Samuel Prescott's office on the 14th floor of the Hartford Financial Building. The receptionist guided me to a conference room at the end of the corridor, complete with dark wood and leather seats and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the type of space where big things happen. Madeline was already present. She sat at the head of the table as if she owned it, her Hermes bag perfectly placed and her posture impeccable. Evan sat alongside her, swiping through his phone with the feverish desperation of a guy longing to be somewhere else. I took my seat across from them. My cane rested on the chair. Madeline did not glance at me. Samuel Prescott appeared with a leather briefcase and a court reporter following him. He seemed older than I recalled, silver-haired and dignified, with the serenity that comes from decades of giving life-changing news to individuals who were unprepared to hear it. Thank you all for coming, he added, taking his seat. Before we begin the formal reading, I need to confirm a few details. He opened a manila folder and glanced at Madeline. Mrs. Collins, have you ever seen your parents' whole will, which they filed with my office? Madeline straightened. I have seen the will. Yes, it was located on my mother's nightstand. The paper is on the nightstand. Samuel nodded slowly. Could you explain it? 4 pages. Standard legal terminology. Everything was given to me as the eldest daughter. Samuel removed his spectacles and wiped them clean with a towel. The motion was leisurely and even dramatic. Mrs. Collins, he asked gently, have you ever seen the whole will, or simply the summary that your mother retained as a reference copy? Madeline's hand clenched around her purse. For the first time, her smile faded. What exactly are you talking about? Madeline's voice had a sharper edge now. A summary. That was the will. Samuel unzipped his briefcase and took out a big paper encased in blue legal covering. He put it on the table between us. This is your parents' final will and testament. 36 pages. Executed 7 months ago at our office, witnessed by 3 of my associates, notarized, and filed in probate court. Madeline leaned forwards. That is impossible. I saw the will. It was dated 5 years ago. It said, What you saw, Mrs. Collins, Samuel said, was a rough draft. Your parents kept it on their nightstand as a reference, but they changed their estate plan dramatically before they died. Samuel taps the document. Here's the legal version. Only one version matters. Evan's phone clattered onto the table. He did not pick it up. This is fraudulent. Madeline stood with her chair scratching across the hardwood. You're assisting her in fraud. She probably fabricated it. Mrs. Collins. Samuel's voice did not raise but instead hardened. I've been your family's attorney for 25 years. I wrote your parents' first will when you were 16 years old. I don't commit fraud, and I don't understand the connotation. Madeline opened her mouth and then closed it. Her hands shook. Sit down, Samuel urged. It was not a request. She sat. I observed my sister's expression go from amazement to fury to terror. When she finally glanced at me, there was something different in her gaze, something that resembled panic. They would not do this, she muttered. They would not. Samuel started turning pages. Perhaps we should let your parents to speak for themselves. The space felt smaller, the air felt thinner, and I knew everything was going to change. Samuel read carefully and methodically, emphasizing every word. We leave our investment portfolio of roughly $15.5 million to our daughter, Madeline Grace Bennett Collins, which will be retained in a managed trust. Madeline can take a maximum of $55,000 every year, with the remaining paid to her children on their 32nd birthday. Madeline made a sound like she had been punched. A trust? Evan leaned forwards. What do you mean by a trust? We need the money right now. Samuel proceeded as if Evan had not spoken. The paper contains a letter from your parents outlining their rationale. Should I read it? Yes, I said before Madeline could disagree. Samuel adjusted his spectacles. We adore Madeline, but we've seen her struggle with financial decisions her whole adult life. We've seen money slip into projects that never materialized. We do not want our life's work to be lost within a year of our death. Trust is not a penalty. It provides protection. Madeline's face had changed from white to gray. Evan stared at the table as if he wished it would swallow him. Samuel now flipped numerous pages on the family home and adjacent property, which is worth at around $4.6 million. I stopped breathing. Our daughter, Claire Ann Bennett, will inherit our home. Claire has been our comfort and friend during our dying years, subject to the stipulation that it not be sold for 12 years. She has nurtured our garden, held our hands, and brought us calm. She owns the house. She's earned it. My eyesight clouded. Madeline was speaking up somewhere far away, complaining or demanding, but I could not hear her. All I could hear were my parents' voices coming from beyond the grave. There is one more thing, Samuel said. He went inside his briefcase and took out a USB disk. Your parents created a video message to be shown at the reading. They were really persistent about it. Madeline's head jerked upward. What video? I had no idea about any videos. That was the objective, Mrs. Collins. Samuel attached the disc to a laptop, and my mother's face appeared on the wall-mounted screen. She was seated in our living room, in her favorite chair by the window. My father stood behind her with his hand on her shoulder. They both seemed exhausted. They both seemed determined. Girls, my mother started. If you're watching this, it means we're gone, and it means things have unfolded the way we feared they might. Next, my dad spoke. Madeline, you are our firstborn. We've loved you from the time you came, but love does not imply blindness. We've seen how you treat your sister. We've seen how you disregard, demean, and push her away. My mother's eyes glistened. Claire, you're not worthless. You never were. You are our calm power. You stayed while Madeline sought things that shone. You cared. You showed up. We revised our will after Christmas. My father began, after we saw Madeline omit you from the family portrait, after we heard her tell your mother that you were pulling us down. His voice trembled. We were not going to allow our death be another way for you to be forgotten. My mother reached for the camera. We hope you can reconcile. We actually do. But if you can't, and Madeline continues on her road, Claire will never be evicted from her house. The screen became dark. I could hardly see through my tears. But I heard Madeline's chair scrape back as she stood and walked out without saying anything. If you've ever had someone in your family suddenly see your worth, even if it was too late, you'll understand how Claire felt in that moment. Finally, let me know in the comments whether this situation resonated with you, and for anyone wondering what Madeline did next, believe me, the story isn't finished. The actual conflict was about to start. But first, let me know. Do you believe Madeline deserved what she received, or was it overly harsh? Leave a comment below. Now, return to the tale. Madeline did not get far. I discovered her in the corridor outside the conference room, resting against the wall and wrapping her arms around herself. Evan stood a few steps away, phone glued to his ear, urgently speaking to someone. A bank, possibly a creditor, and individuals who were circling their life like sharks. When Madeline saw me, something shattered. This is not fair. Her voice was rough. You do not comprehend. I've got a family to support. I have duties. You urged your sister to find another place to die. She flinched. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I held my voice steady. You intended every word. You've meant every word for years. You don't understand what it's like. She was weeping now, with mascara pouring down her cheeks. Evan's investments failed. We owe $420,000. The bank is going to seize our home. My children are about to lose their house. And you? She pointed at me with a shaky finger. You do not have anyone. You don't have children. You do not need the money. I let her remarks to lie in the air between us. You're right, I responded gently. I don't have children. I do not have a husband. I don't possess any of the characteristics you believe make a person desirable. I moved a step closer. But I also didn't spend years mistreating my own sister. I did not stand in our parents' house 4 days after their funeral and advise you to go somewhere else to die. Madeline's shoulders trembled. For a brief time she reminded me of the lost and afraid little girl from my childhood. But then I recalled how she had made me feel useless throughout the years. And I recalled that kindness has limitations. I could have destroyed her in that moment. I could have recounted every nasty remark, dismissive gesture, and every time she made me feel like I didn't deserve to live. I could have told her precisely how I felt about her beautiful life, flawless appearance, and perfect lies. But this is not who I am. That is not who my parents raised me to be. So I leaned on my cane and talked gently. You advised me to find another place to die. I discovered somewhere. I halted. It is called home. Madeline's breath caught. I'm not going to gloat, Madeline. That is not who I am. But I'm going to create a barrier. I met her gaze. You will never talk to me that way again. Ever. Not in private, public, or in front of your children. I'm done being your punching bag. She gazed at me as if she was seeing me for the first time. I have a proposal, I said. The trust pays you $55,000 every year. That is not insignificant. But I understand it will not fix your immediate concerns. I took a breath. I'm willing to lend you the funds you need to pay off the bank. No interest, sensible terms, enough to save your home and keep your children in school. Madeline's lips opened and then closed. But there is one condition. I held out my hand. You apologized openly at a family meal in front of everyone who attended the memorial gathering. You tell them what you said to me and admit you were wrong. The hallway was silent. Evan had ended his phone conversation. He stared at me as if I had a second head. Madeline wiped her tears. And if I don't, you'll have to find it out yourself. It's your choice. Madeline didn't respond. She looked at Evan, who was looking at the floor. Then she regained her calm, took up her purse, and headed to the elevator. Evan followed without looking back. The doors closed behind them, leaving me alone in the corridor. Samuel Prescott arrived alongside me a little later, placing a kind touch on my elbow. Miss Bennett, we still have papers to finish. I nodded and followed him back into the conference room. The court reporter had departed. The video was gloomy, just Samuel and myself, with the weight of all that had transpired. He passed paperwork over the table, including deeds, account transfers, and signing forms. I signed where he directed, my fingers quivering slightly. Your parents were proud of you, Samuel added as I signed the final page. They told me several times. Your mother, especially. He took off his spectacles and massaged his eyes. She replied, you were the only thing that made those last few months bearable. I was speechless. She also said something else. Samuel removed a sealed packet from his briefcase. She asked that I give you this after the reading. A letter specifically for you. I took the envelope. My mother's handwriting is on the front. For Claire. When you are ready. One more thing. Samuel stood and shook my hand. Your father requested me to inform you that he altered his will 3 days after Christmas. He said, Samuel's voice caught, that he had finally figured out which daughter regarded them as individuals and which as bank accounts. I left that office with the deed to my childhood home, $15.5 million in a trust with my name on it, and a letter from my mother clutched to my chest. It did not feel like triumph. It felt like grief. 6 weeks later, I moved into my parents' bedroom. It was weird at first to sleep where they had slept and wake up to the same vista of the garden that my mother had seen every morning for the previous 30 years. But it also seemed natural, as if they had reserved a spot for me. I continued with physical therapy twice a week. Most days I didn't need the cane anymore. I was strolling on my own, preparing my own meals, and imagining what the future may be like. The neighborhood has shifted in minor ways. People who had come to the memorial reception, who had laughed when Madeline called me resourceful, had now crossed the street when they noticed me. Word had spread about the will reading, the video, Madeline's words, and her loss. They felt humiliated. Good. Madeline and Evan sold their home in Greenwich for $685,000. After paying off their obligations, they just had enough money to cover the security deposit on a 2-bedroom apartment in a town 40 minutes away. Evan was sacked from his job after his bad investments came to light. Something concerning undisclosed losses and disgruntled customers. He was now working for a regional bank, earning a fraction of his old pay. Their children had switched from private to public school. Madeline explained that it was because the public school offered a stronger arts program. Nobody believed her. She phoned me once, 4 weeks after the reading. "Is your offer still available?" Her voice sounded flat and weary. "Yes. I'm not prepared to apologize yet." I was silent for a time. "Then I am not prepared to make a check." The call went dead. But she'd phoned. That was something. It was not forgiveness. But that might have been the beginning of accountability. 10 weeks after the reading, I finally read my mother's diary. I had been carrying it with me since Helen Brooks gave it to me, keeping it on my nightstand, and occasionally clutching it as I slept. But I had been unable to read it. The prospect of hearing my mother's voice again, even via her calligraphy, was like opening a wound that I wasn't sure I could shut. But that night, sitting in her yard beneath the stars, I was prepared. Initially, the entries were ordinary. Grocery lists, doctor's appointments, weather observations, and which plants were flowering. My mother was always a realistic woman, even in her personal feelings. Then I reached the final 10 pages concerning Madeline. "I adore my eldest daughter, but I worry about her. She seeks favor, success, and the appearance of perfection, all of which she can never achieve. I hope she can find peace eventually. I hope she understands that what she has is sufficient. Claire has no idea how much she saved us after the accident when she moved home. I assumed I was looking after her, but she was looking after us. She saved us from loneliness by just being here, providing breakfast, reading to me, and sitting with Jonathan in the garden." The final entry was made 4 weeks before the disaster. "Claire serves as my mirror. Patient, quiet, and strong in ways that no one recognizes until it is too late. I should have told her more frequently. I should have shouted the words aloud rather than writing them down. Claire, you should know this. You were never useless. You were everything." I closed my diary and glanced up at the sky. The tears flowed, but they were different this time. They were not filled with anguish. They were released. 8 months after my parents died, I went to work part-time, initially for a landscape design business in Hartford. Small crafts, nothing too difficult, but it felt amazing to utilize my abilities again and watch something beautiful emerge from nothing. My first significant undertaking was the garden behind my parents' home. My mother had planted roses, hydrangeas, and a little vegetable patch that had become overgrown in the months since she had been able to care it. I renovated the entire area, keeping her flowers, adding new paths, and building a tiny seat where I could sit and reflect. It was the first item I'd produced since my injury. It would not win any accolades, but it was mine. It was home. Madeline wrote a letter 5 months after the will reading. No phone call, no visit. A letter. "I've been reflecting about what you and I said, as well as everything else. I am not prepared to apologize in front of everyone. I am not sure whether I will ever be ready, but I want you to know that I am trying to figure out why I became this person. And I apologize, even if I can't say it aloud yet. I apologize." I reread the letter 3 times. Then I put it in my desk drawer, among our mother's journal and our father's business card. It wasn't the apology I had asked for. It wasn't made public. It was not responsibility, but it was something. We were not close after that. We probably wouldn't be. But we could be in the same room and not pretend the other didn't exist. We could exchange birthday cards. We might possibly construct something new. My name is Claire Bennett. I was informed that I was useless. I was instructed to find another place to die. Instead, I discovered a home. If Claire's experience reminds you that your value is not determined by what others think of you, I'd want to hear from you.